Welcome to Lucknow and to this episode of Eureka. We are going to have a very wonderful, very informative conversation with Dr. Anil Kumar Tripathi, who is the Director of Central Institute of Medicinal and Aromatic Plants, a CSIR institute in Lucknow. Before we continue this conversation, let's take a quick look at his brief profile. Keep watching Eureka.
Aroma Mission has been launched with the ambition of making India to emerge as global leader in the production of essential oils extracted from aromatic crops. It's where Professor Anil Kumar Tripathi has been heading this mission, who says that Aroma Mission will also boost the income of farmers. Currently, Professor Tripathi is the director of CSIR, Central Institute of Medicinal and Aromatic Plants at Lucknow. Before joining his present position at Lucknow in February 2014, he was a professor of biotechnology and coordinator, Functional Genomics Group, Interdisciplinary School of Life Sciences at Banaras Hindu University. He did his MSc and PhD in botany from Banaras Hindu University and has 30 years of postgraduate teaching as well as research experience in biotechnology. Professor Tripathi has made notable contributions by identifying and characterizing nitrogen-fixing bacteria which support the growth of important grasses that inhibit desiccating desert. He was also the first from India to show the occurrence of Ralstonia as microsymbiont colonizing the legume nodules. Professor Anil Kumar Tripathi received many prestigious awards. Noted among them is the Young Scientist Award of Indian Science Congress Association and Career Award of UGC. He is a Fellow of Indian National Science Academy, National Academy of Agriculture Sciences, amongst others.
Thank you. It's been a very wonderful opportunity. Your institute looks very, I should say, aromatic, very nice smelling. Let's start with your background. I mean, you came to this institute recently, but before that you have been spearheading number of interesting programs in Banaras Hindu University. So, can you tell us some of the major work that you did in Banaras Hindu University?
You see, I joined CMAP in 2014, February 2014 to be precise. Before that, I was at Banaras Hindu University. And Banaras Hindu University happens to be my alma mater.
Also.
I was even a student of that university. Later on, I joined there as a faculty. As a faculty, you have two major responsibilities. One is teaching, another is research. And as part of my teaching program, I have been teaching genetics, molecular biology, genetic engineering, and also environmental biotechnology to the master's students, basically. And as part of my research, I have continued to explore the areas of research based on my curiosity and based on the possibilities. So initially when I joined, the infrastructure was very limiting because universities have very limited resources. So I always feel that the research is art of doing feasible things. And therefore, I started working on biodiversity, microbial biodiversity, which is associated with different plants, including plants living in the deep water. Some of the rice, for example, which lives in the deep water, it is cultivated. And on the other extreme, we went to the Thar Desert in Jaisalmer and to find out the question that how the plants are surviving, where from they are getting nitrogen and other nutrients. Are there bacteria which are contributing there? So that was very interesting, study where we were able to identify the bacterial community which was contributing for the plant growth.
See, one thing most of us would know, I mean, at least today, given the kind of messages that we are getting, that what we thought earlier, bacteria immediately means germs and something not desirable. That's not what we now think. I mean, we know that there are good bacteria which are essential for our own health.
Right.
Do you say that similarly there is some kind of a symbiosis between bacteria and plants also?
Well, of course, because it is now a known fact that every organism, every higher organism, what you say, contains a major portion of bacterial community.
Okay.
Almost in every part of our body, we have bacterial community. And similarly, all living organisms.
Whether it is
Likewise,
plant or anything.
Yes, exactly. And in plants, we have some bacteria which are associated outside the plant, like around root we call rhizosphere bacteria, and the bacteria which is around leaves, they are called phyllosphere bacteria. And there are majority of bacteria which are living inside.
Inside the plant?
Inside the
Okay.
plant, they are called endophytes.
Something like, for example, bacteria which lives in our guts.
Exactly, exactly. So they are there living inside the plant, and those who are very intimately related, they are called symbiotic. They have symbiotic relationship, which is a reciprocal mutual relationship. So these are the different types of
See,
bacteria.
in animals and human beings, I mean, the gut bacteria, for example, is essential for digestion. I mean, without that, I mean, many of the things that we consume is not broken into parts which can be, absorbed by our body.
Yeah.
What kind of contribution these microbes make to the plants?
See, my focus has been on nitrogen fixation. And biological nitrogen fixation is a very important process which has led to the evolution of life on the earth. Like evolution of the carbon fixation, the nitrogen fixation is another very important process because of for the evolution. And these days we are using petroleum hydrocarbons to produce nitrogenous fertilizers, and we are polluting our fields. Now the effort has been for last several decades. There are a lot of groups which are working, and we are also part of the same pursuit to find out the bugs, the bacteria, which can promote plant growth by producing some kind of hormones which promote root proliferation, and they provide nitrogen, fixed nitrogen. They take atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into assimilable form of nitrogen, which goes and benefits to the plants.
So basically, you want to produce fertilizer at the roots rather than in some factories.
Well,
In a sense.
I would not like to put it that way. That it's not that simplistic, but to develop or to nurture that kind of relationships which are already existing in the nature. What has happened during last several years, the rice has been bred for consuming more nitrogen. There used to be rice varieties earlier which were fixing nitrogen. Their endophytes were fixing, but they were slow growing, and therefore they have been bred out. And the ones which are in the current practices, they are very efficient in consuming nitrogen fertilizers. And we are still emphasizing on nitrogen use efficiency. So this has been one part of my research, but I have tried to go deeper also into one bacterium. That we are able to see, we are able to smell, we are able to feel the temperature. How does a bacterium do that?
Okay.
That is something very fundamental, because very often when we inoculate plants for a positive response, some plants respond, some do not. So we do not know how the bacterium is behaving. And therefore we ask this fundamental question that how does bacterium sense that it's high temperature outside or low temperature? Whether it's a salt outside or no salt, whether there's a light outside or no light, because all these things affect the life of the bacteria, and therefore it's important for bacterium to understand it. And we have been working on a system called sigma factors, which are responsible for transcription process, initiating transcription. So this decides which gene has to undergo expression. And therefore it's very crucial. After sensing environment, this is the crucial step, sigma factor is the crucial step, that which genes are to be transcribed or expressed, which are not. And therefore there are 24 sigma factors. In E. coli, there are only 7 sigma factors, but in my bacterium, which is my favorite, which is called Azospirillum, there are 23 sigma factors. And we are trying to understand that how does there are cascades of regulation, and there is a complete network of regulation. And using all this, we are trying to understand the systems biology of this bacterium so that we can make use of this systems biology towards synthetic biology. For example, bacterium has a potential to produce variety of chemicals which are produced by plants. For example, in University of Berkeley, Jay Kiesling has been able to show that antimalarial amorphardine or artemisinin can be produced in a bacterium in E. coli. We are trying to produce it in Azospirillum. Because we have understood the organism well, now we know completely its regulatory system, and therefore a plant gene can be expressed in bacteria and its metabolite can be produced.
So one can actually make an industrial kind of a production, but using biomethods.
Exactly.
That's
because this is a kind of platform on which not only amorphardine, a variety of secondary metabolites can be produced from bacteria. Because in the field, plant has to take 3 months, 6 months, 1 year but in bacteria, in a fermenter, you can grow it in a larger scale.
Yeah, and
That
also
is-
in a short time. That's
that is
that's
the advantage of the synthetic biology.
Thank you, Abhin. This is where we'll take a very short break. We'll take a very short break. Keep watching Eureka. We'll continue this conversation after a very short break. Welcome back to Eureka. We are having a very wonderful conversation with Dr. Anil Kumar Tripathi, who is the Director of Central Institute of Medicinal and Aromatic Plants in Lucknow. This institute is 60 years old. I mean, it's celebrating its Diamond Jubilee. I saw lots of banners and posters. I'm sure the whole institution is proud of its achievements.
Of course, of course.
So, can you share some of the major achievements this institute has done in the last 50, 60 years?
Yes, I think there are two very major things. There are actually several, but if you ask me to choose one or two, I would say that about 30 years back, India was importing menthol.
Yeah,
And menthol, which is used in cough syrup, in the toothpaste, and variety of other applications. This is an ingredient which was being imported. And our visionary directors, they thought about, can we cultivate this plant, which is called Mentha arvensis. This is a Japanese mint. They brought it from outside. They started cultivating it. And they realized that farmers can benefit from it. But there were certain limitations with this plant, because it was taking longer time to mature. So farmer had to sacrifice one crop in order to have mentha cultivated. What our scientists did, that they developed varieties which were of shorter duration.
Okay.
So after the harvest of Rabi, when there is a 2-3 months time before they plant paddy, 2-3 months time was there, and our crop precisely fits during this period.
Okay.
So this is a third additional bonus crop which farmers were able to take. And there we developed high yielding varieties, agronomic practices, processing technologies, distillation technologies, and above all, the deployment. We have a very strong team which will go out to the field, interact with the farmers, and they will, convince farmers. And that is why during last 2 decades, the India is the largest producer and exporter of menthol mint oil in the world.
You mean to say that 30 years ago we were importing for our own use?
Exactly.
And in last about for 2 decades, we are not only the biggest producer, but we are also one of the
largest
major exporter.
Yes, 80% of the global menthol production, natural menthol production, is done in India. And out of that, I'm happy to say that out of that 80% is produced in UP.
Okay.
So the farmers have greatly been benefited by
So
that.
whenever I have a menthol, let's say chewing gum or something like that, I'm actually
Always remember that you are, tasting CMAP's contribution.
that's a very interesting point. I think most people will not even know such things, right?
Yeah, so we are trying to, actually people in the North India, those who are into mentha, they just know CMAP very well. And the second very important contribution which we have made is regarding development of anti-malarial. The cerebral malaria, the deadliest kind of malaria, and thousands of people were dying in India. At that time, again,
In fact, actually, one of the study in India shows that if you look at the deadliest animal in India,
yes,
it's not tiger,
yes,
it's not lion,
right,
it's not even snakes,
right.
it is mosquitoes.
That's
The
right.
people who die because of mosquito bite is much more than any other animal affected.
I think what you said precisely, that was the thought in the process of our visionary former directors. And CMAP, together with CDRI, they decided that let us try to cultivate this plant Artemisia annua. And they somehow brought some seeds from, I think, World Health Organization, Kew Garden. They started growing it here. It was not Indian plant, it was a Chinese plant.
Yeah.
UU2, madam, she was awarded Nobel Prize, but she had done the very nice fundamental research. But actual translational potential was realized in India because CMAP developed varieties of Artemisia annua, increased its artemisinin content from 0.1% to 1.2%.
Okay, 0.1 to 1.2.
It will be 10 times,
10 times,
about 12
okay.
times, yes. And not only developing variety, but developing process technology for generating kilogram quantities of artemisinin, and then chemical processes for developing its stable, derivatives. And then we worked together with CDRI. CDRI put its effort into the drug development, And ultimately, they also collaborated with the Malaria Research Center, and eventually the most effective drug against cerebral malaria came out, which is based on the alpha-beta artether. This is the final product, which is a transformed product of the amorphidine. So this is the, if it was transferred to the companies, and millions of people's lives in India and in Africa was saved because of this development and this contribution.
This, whenever somebody gets a serious malaria, they are given ART treatment.
Exactly, artether, ART. This,
Yeah, right. So I believe from what you say that unknowingly they are actually getting benefited from CMAP.
CMAP, CDRI, and there are other
Yeah, of
institutions.
course.
But the basic, our effort was to make in India. We should not depend on China or, for example, other country. We should be able to grow the raw material in India, extract the artemisinin within India, and then the drug development.
Because after all, I mean, it's malaria is one of the very commonest diseases even now in India, right? I mean,
Yes.
which is deadliest.
If we had
and
not
also-
developed this, the cost of artemisinin globally would have much higher. Because we have the capability, the Chinese have kept the prices low.
Not only that, I think because we are now able to supply this medicine at cheaper prices to Africa,
Right.
we are also averting a world crisis, right?
Of course, of course.
That's also, I think, a very important contribution that we should not forget. I mean,
Precisely.
most of Africa survives because of drugs, affordable drugs from India.
Exactly.
That's I think, a very important point. Perhaps this is where we will take.
We are very, very proud of our contribution in that respect. Yeah.
I think we'll take a very short break here. Keep watching Eureka. We'll continue this conversation after a short break. Welcome back to Eureka. We are having a very wonderful, very informative conversation with Dr. Anil Kumar Tripathi, who is the Director of Central Institute of Medicinal and Aromatic Plants, a CSIR institute in Lucknow. Your institute says medicinal plants, which of course we can all understand, and also aromatic plants. What is it actually?
See, medicinal and aromatic plants research at CMAP has been focused around empowering farmers for their greater profit. Because medicinal plants go to the traditional systems of medicine, because there is a deficiency, lack of availability of the desired medicinal plants to support and strengthen the traditional systems of medicine. So that goes into the Ayurvedic industry.
Okay.
But aromatic crops, they go into the aroma industry. They are again industrial crops which bring a lot of benefit to the farmers. The advantage of aromatic crops is that aroma industry, the global aroma industry, is in need of these essential oils and their ingredients, aroma ingredients.
Say like aroma is like, for example, you might say lemongrass
Yes,
is a
yes,
aroma.
yes, yes,
or
exactly.
what are the major aroma, plants that we are growing in
Yes,
India?
I think we have a list of plants. You have already mentioned one, lemongrass. But our major aromatic crop has been mentha. And thereafter, we have been working on lemongrass and Pomarosa and vetiver, patchouli. And there are a series of other aromatic crops. But these are the major crops on which we are focusing, because these crops are such which are a great support to the farmers. For example, if the land is affected by salinity, you grow vetiver or Pomarosa. If the land is affected by drought or low water availability, you go Pomarosa and lemongrass. These crops are also not grazed by animals. That is the advantage. So the farmers very often are afraid that the animals will destroy the crop. So, for example, we have positioned these crops in Vidarbha and Bundelkhand, where farmers were committing suicide. We have developed high-yielding varieties. For example, lemongrass variety, 80% of the lemongrass grown in India commercially, it is our variety, CMAP variety. And we continue to improve the yield of essential oils and their citral content, so that aroma industry continues to benefit, and also in turn farmer also continues to benefit. So these are some of the crops. Vetiver, we have started in the coastal area. You might be aware of tsunami affected area of Kadalur. There we had gone, they were cultivating vetiver, and they were getting 0.3% oil from their roots. Our variety had 1.6%. We deployed our variety all the way from Pantnagar to Kadalur, and now farmers are very happy. The farmers who were selling their roots for 100 rupees, the buyers are now fighting for purchasing it 200 rupees or 250 rupees. So that
So
is the
doubling
kind of
income is kind of indirectly.
Exactly. So the advantage is that if it's a flood affected area, like there are river banks are there, farmers are not growing anything because their crop will get destroyed because of the flood. Vetiver is the crop which sustains flood situation.
Okay.
So I had been to one of the farmers' field in one of the villages, and a farmer who was cultivating vetiver on the bank of the river, he was earning about 90,000 to 1 lakh rupees per acre, whereas the traditional farmers with their rice and this paddy and wheat, they were earning about 25 to 30,000 rupees per year, per acre. So you can see about 3 times difference in their income. So they were convinced, they are getting gradually convinced. And our also focus is that we organize a Kisan Mela on 31st of January every year. And the number of farmers participating in this Kisan Mela is increasing every year. From 2,500 in 2014, last Kisan Mela witnessed the participation of about 7,000 farmers.
Okay, that's a
And this is because we care for the farmers. All our scientists, they take this as a festival in which we prepare the mentha roots for distribution to the farmers. We cultivate it at the Pantnagar farm, which is about 117 hectare. That is our lifeline from where we get planting material. We get it here. So the Pantnagar, we have 4 centers, one in Bangalore, another Hyderabad, and Pantnagar is our major center, where we have about 117 hectare land, where we get good quality planting material produced for distribution all around the country.
Okay.
And that center is also giving us great support. It's like a lifeline for us because CSIR has recently launched an aroma mission. And in this aroma mission, the CMAP is leading the aroma mission, and other participating labs include Institute of Himalayan Bioresource Technology at Palampur and the Indian Institute of Integrative Medicine at Jammu and our NIST at Jorhat, and another lab in Lucknow, National Botanical Research Institute. So all these 5 labs are coordinating in spearheading this aroma mission, and the baton to lead this mission has been given to CMAP because of our past performance in Mentha.
What is the main goal of this mission? I mean, what do you aim from this?
See, I think the CSIR had a foresight of thinking about the farmers, because gradually, because of the climate change, the traditional agriculture is getting affected, their productivity is getting compromised. And under this situation, aromatic crops have a lot of promise that if farmers have to be, persuaded to continue to the cultivation, their agriculture has to be made profitable.
Okay.
So they can cultivate traditional things, but they should also have an option of earning some good amount of money.
So if you make a kind of a mixture, then maybe the agriculture can perhaps see
Exactly.
That
So the idea is that they should also use part of their land for cultivation of aromatic crops, which are more profitable. Climate variation doesn't affect it, and they get good return out of that. So this is one important area. So the CSR vision was that can we pan-India in different states, depending upon the agroclimatic situation, recommend specific varieties of crops and demonstrate their success so that the farmers can get inspired and replicate it in their respective fields. So at the moment, our target is approximately cultivation of 6,000 hectare of the aromatic crops all over India. But this will be with our direct intervention because we provide improved varieties, planting material, we provide even distillation unit, we provide buyback facility, the marketing facility, so that farmers are happy.
You are looking at something like 6,000
hectare to begin with.
But what is the current level now?
See, it is 1 year we have initiated the program, and we have been able to achieve 1,700 hectare in the first year itself. And we expect every other year the area to multiply by 3 to 5 times.
Okay.
So we will be surpassing our target by miles. This is our expectation.
Okay. Very interesting point. I mean, we don't have much time, but then this one question I suppose is very, very important. When this institute was started about 60 years ago, India was in a different states. Our situation was different. Maybe even our needs were very different. I mean, immediate needs were different. Now we have entered into 21st century. We need to look ahead. I mean, we need to look for future.
Right.
So what is the new direction, new vision, new path you think CMAP should take?
See, our Prime Minister's concern has been that we have been the largest exporter of raw material. Now Prime Minister expects that we should be able to export the value-added material, not the raw material.
Not just raw.
We are providing raw material like castor oil. Prime Minister himself has cited this example. We are exporting, we are largest producer of castor oil globally. We are exporting it, and we are importing some flavor ingredients which are 900 times more costlier.
Okay.
We are having such a huge scientific manpower. We have the capability, and we have taken this task that we will be able to convert this castor oil into decalactones, which are the flavor material, which are about 900 times costlier. We should be able to do this. Instead of exporting castor oil, we should be in a position to export decalactone. And so similarly, we are trying to use, not because our industry people are very content exporting essential oils.
Yeah.
We want to coax them to take up some of the technologies which we have developed and we are developing for extraction, fractionation of the aroma ingredient, and do further modification to make it more valuable and then to export it. They have to invest, industry has to invest the money in the infrastructure so that we become leader not in raw material export but in the value-added product export.
So that more employment can be generated, more, industrial growth can
More
happen.
employment, more return to your effort,
Yeah.
more return to your labor, and that will eventually percolate down to the farmers as well. So that is our future vision, that we have to expand the base of cultivation, but along with that we have to see that we developed value addition possibilities and we ensure that value addition takes place so that we emerge as a exporter of the value added products,
Not just only the raw
material.
material. That's,
Exactly.
I think, a very, very interesting point. And with this, we need to end this conversation here for lack of time. Keep watching Eureka. We'll come back with another interesting conversation next week. Thank you, sir, for being with us in the show. It's been a very wonderful, very informative, and very thought-provoking discussions.
Thank you. Thank you.